we're going to see how we can compare unit rates that are given in different representations. Now, representations would be like a graph, a table, an equation, or just in writing. So let's see how we can compare unit rates. Here's our first example. This one says, oops, let me change my pen over. Oops, let's do it different. Okay, it says Hannah delivers newspapers and gets paid a constant amount for each paper delivered. This relationship is represented by the equation y equals 1.25x, where x represents the number of papers she delivers and y represents the amount of money that she earns. Now, Sophie also delivers newspapers and her earnings are represented in the graph below. Who makes more money? So we have to compare this equation and this graph and see who makes more money. Now, in order to figure out who makes more money, we want to compare the unit rate. So in other words, how much money do they each get paid per newspaper? And whoever makes more money per newspaper obviously makes more money overall. So let's look at Hannah. What is her unit rate? Well, her earnings are represented in an equation. Y equals 1.25x. Y says represents the money that she earns. X represents the number of papers. And so this 1.25 right here, this is how much money she earns per paper. Okay, so depending on how many papers she delivers, we multiply that by 1.25. So 1.25 is actually her unit rate. So in other words, she makes $1.25 for each paper that she delivers. Okay, now let's figure out Sophie's unit rate. On her graph, it's a proportional representation because notice it's a straight line and it starts at 0, 0. So in order to find her unit rate, we're just going to see how much she makes for delivering one paper. So here's one newspaper, follow it up to the line, find the point, and how much does she earn for delivering one newspaper? $1. So Sophie earns $1 per paper and Hannah earns $1.25 per paper. So obviously Hannah makes more money. Okay, let's do one more example. Mr. Roberts charges a constant amount per hour that he teaches guitar lessons. This relationship is modeled by the equation y equals 35x, where x represents the number of hours he teaches and y represents the amount of money that he earns. Mrs. Sanders teaches violin lessons and her earnings are shown in the table below. So now we are comparing an equation and a table. Which lessons are cheaper, guitar or violin? Okay, so let's do Mr. Roberts. Mr. R. His is given by the equation y equals 35x, where x is the number of hours and y is the amount of money that he earns. So this 35 right here, this is how much he charges per hour. So in order to figure out how much he earns, we multiply 35 times how many hours that he teaches, and that's how much money he earns. So therefore, this 35 right here is his unit rate. So he charges $35 per hour for guitar lessons. Okay, Mrs. Sanders, she teaches violin, and her earnings are given in this table. Now, we could look for 1 hour and see how much she earns in 1 hour, but 1 hour isn't listed. So we need to figure it out with what we were given. So let's figure out, what do we do to 2 to get 40? What do we multiply by? Multiply by 20, right? 2 times 20 is 40. Let's make sure that's true for all of these. If I do 3 times 20, that's 60. 4 times 20, that's 80. And 5 times 20, that's 100. Okay, so we must be multiplying by 20. Therefore, my unit rate for violin lessons is $20 per hour. So which lessons are cheaper, guitar or violin? The ones that are $20 per hour, violin.